At companies like Google and Meta, the people who decide whether you get hired are not the people who interviewed you. You can walk out of every round feeling great, and the engineers who grilled you don't actually get the final say. After your interviews are done, there's a whole separate round you never see, called the hiring committee, and that's where your offer actually lives or dies. I'm Vinay Bansal. I've worked at top tech companies including Google and I've sat in these rooms. So in this video, I'll walk you through exactly when the hiring committee happens, who's in the room, what they're looking at, and a few things you can actually do to swing it your way. Okay, so to understand why this committee even exists, you need to know that big tech hires in two completely different ways. The first way is pool based, and this is how Google and Meta do it. You go through a generic interview loop that isn't tied to any specific team or role. The interviewers don't know what team you'll land on, so they're just testing you on the general stuff: coding, system design, behavioral. The second way is pipeline based, and this is how most other companies hire. There's a separate pipeline for each open role. The hiring manager runs the loop and manager makes the call. Now here's the problem the pool-based model creates. When 5 different people each interview on one slice of your skills, nobody's looking at you as a whole. One person saw your coding, another saw your system design, a third saw how you communicate, but none of them saw the full picture. So somebody has to sit down and look at the entire packet together, and that's exactly what the hiring committee does. So when does this actually happen? It's not a round you schedule or show up for. It kicks in after all your interviews are done. Here's the sequence. You finish your loop, your recruiter collects all the feedback and builds your packet. And then that packet goes into a queue for next committee meeting, where they'll review around 5 candidates per session. How long you wait depends almost entirely on how much hiring is happening right then. When a department is in heavy hiring push, say cloud hiring during a big expansion, the committee might sit every week. When things are slow, your packet might just wait longer. That's why 2 people can finish their interviews in the same week and hear back weeks apart. It's not about how well you did, it's just about the queue. Now, where does team matching fit into all of this? It can happen before or after the committee. The most common order is team matching first, then committee. When you match with a team first, the hiring manager who wants you writes something called a statement of support, an SOS, and that gets added to your packet. Comment below if you want the full breakdown of what goes into SOS, because I'll make a separate video of that one. The other order happens when your recruiter is confident you did well. In that case, they can send your packet straight to the committee, get you approved, and handle the team matching afterwards. Okay, so who's actually in the room deciding your future? You got at least 5 people there. These are engineering managers, senior engineering managers, and sometimes even directors. It's a mix of peers and managers across different levels, plus usually a cross-functional member who looks at whether you can partner well across teams. And here's a key thing. About every single one of them, they are all experienced interviewers already. You can't even join a hiring committee until you have run a bunch of interviews yourself. So nobody in that room is new to evaluating candidates. They also do this voluntarily on top of their actual day-to-day jobs. The recruiter sits in as well, but the recruiter doesn't get a vote. And these committees are split by functions. So an engineering committee only reviews engineers, and a sales committee only reviews sales. Now let's talk about what they're actually looking at, because it's just a packet. There's your resume, there's every interview's written feedback, which is often incredibly detailed, sometimes close to a transcript, including the actual code you wrote. There's your scores from each round, where Google uses 1 to 4 scale, and anything above 3 is a higher recommendation. There are recruiters' notes flagging any trends worth calling out, and if you've already team matched, there's that statement of support from the hiring manager as well. Now, when it comes to the decision, it's not a majority vote, it's consensus. If one member feels strongly that you shouldn't be hired, the room usually won't push you through. And here's the part most people don't even know. The committee doesn't just read your scores, they weigh who gave them. Google keeps track of every interviewer's history. So if one of your low scores came from someone known to be unusually harsh, or let's say someone pretty junior, the room can actually discount it. Your feedback gets read in the context of who wrote it, not just what it says. So after all of that discussion, what actually comes out of the room? There are three possible decisions. The first is a hire. Your packet's strong, the room reaches consensus, and you move forward to the offer or to the team matching if you haven't done that yet. The second is a no hire. There's a gap the room can't get past. Usually 1 week round nobody can defend or no clear signal about what level you actually are. The third one is the one people don't expect, and it's called a hold or sometimes more information needed. This is when the room thinks you might be a hire but your packet is missing a specific signal they need. So instead of rejecting you right away, they send you back for one more interview and then they review you again at a later meeting. This third output trips people up. The assumption is that it's a simple yes or no. So when a recruiter comes back asking you to do one more round, people panic and think something went wrong. It's actually the opposite. Getting sent back for another interview means the room is leaning towards yes and wants one more data point to get you there. Now see, your recruiter usually won't even send your packet to the committee unless they're already fairly confident you'll pass. They've seen the feedback, they know roughly where the bar sits, and putting up a weak packet just wastes everyone's time. So if your recruiter is taking your packet to committee, that itself is a good sign. People do still get rejected here, it's not a rubber stamp, but the odds are better than most candidates here, precisely because there's a filter before you even get in the room. Okay, so the honest truth is that by the time your packet reaches the committee, your loop is done and mostly the outcome is already locked in. But a few things genuinely matter. So let me give you the ones that actually work and the ones that don't. The first thing that moves the needle is consistency. One amazing round will not rescue one bad round. Next feedback creates debate in the room and debate creates risk. The candidates who get clean hire decisions are almost always the ones who scored solid across the board, not the ones with one brilliant round and one disaster. So when you prep, don't just sharpen the stuff you're already good at, because the round that sinks you is your weakest one. Second, if you get that whole outcome, treat it like a second chance it actually is. When your recruiter asks for one more interview, the room is already leaning your way. So don't walk in rattled or defensive or annoyed that you have to do one more round. Walk in like it's a fresh round and clear the bar. Third, the statement of support carries real weight. If you team match before the committee, the hiring manager who wants you writes that SOS into your packet, and a strong specific one is a genuine signal in the room. That's actually one good reason to team match before going to committee if you ever have the option. Fourth, internal references can genuinely help. If there's someone already inside the company who has actually worked with you, not just someone who knows your name, ask your recruiter to attach their feedback to your packet. That phrase I just said, actually worked with you, is the whole thing here. A vague reference from someone barely knows you does nothing, but a specific, credible note from a person the company already trusts gives the room a real data point that didn't come out of your interviews. It won't rescue a weak packet on its own, but on a borderline one, it can absolutely tip things your way. So if you know people on the inside who would actually vouch for your actual work, line that up early and tell your recruiter about that. Now let me also cover what doesn't work so you don't waste your energy. Asking your recruiter to escalate or appeal the decision does nothing, because they didn't even vote and they can't force a different outcome. And trying to decode your rejection feedback is a dead end, because Google's standard rejection response is deliberately vague. So you will just drive yourself crazy reading into it. One last thing worth knowing. If you do get a no, it's almost never permanent. The reapply window is usually around 6 to 12 months. So a rejection today is just a rejection today. If you want a real insider view on your own situation, that's exactly what we do over at BeTopTen.com, where you can book time with people who have actually sat in these rooms at companies like Google and Meta. The hiring committee feels like a scary black box, but it's really just a system built to keep things fair and consistent across millions of candidates. You might never sit in that room, but now you know how it works, what's in the packet, and where your actual leverage is, and that already puts you ahead of almost everyone else applying. Hope this video helped you. See you in the next one. Thank you very much.